Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to you. It is the end of another good week and another good week in the Word. We started the book of Nehemiah this week, and now we're in chapter 5, verses 1 to 19. So I hope you've read ahead. I hope you've been with me all week long. If not, you got some catching up to do, but I encourage you to catch up and stay together with us in the Word. We do this every day, Monday through Friday, 10 o'clock. It's called 10 with Tim. And it's just a way of encouraging each other to stay in the Word. And we're reading the Bible through, not from Genesis to Revelation. Obviously, we do a lot of skipping around. But when we get into a book, we try to finish that book. So we're plunging through the book of Nehemiah right now. And chapter 5 is good. It's really interesting. What chapter 5 reveals is that the wall building has, in many ways, begun to threaten the economic substructure of the community. You know what I mean by that? It's the way, gosh, it's like good news, bad news, right? The good news is everybody has pitched in to build this wall. Now, there's opposition. We've been talking about opposition. It's going to continue, on Monday. It continues to have opposition from outside and from inside. And this is sort of more of that inside opposition. And this isn't really, like people opposing the work per se. It's kind of the effect, the consequence, what happens when everything goes according to plan, but they didn't necessarily see this part coming. Remember at the end of chapter 4 yesterday when Nehemiah, because of the outside threat, because of the threat of enemy nations, now, Nehemiah told nobody to go home. They've all stayed inside the walls. And day and night, they're either working on the wall or they're guarding the city. And so you can only do that for so long. You got to remember, everybody's a volunteer. Like this is not their job. And so now, having become full-time wall builders, it's affecting their livelihoods. All of these people, just sort of live off the land, and they live off the land that's at their home, but most of them aren't at home anymore. They're in Jerusalem working on the wall. You see the dilemma now. And so what we have in chapter 5 is just this breakdown of the economy, because now a great number of the people haven't been able to work their farm. We're probably in the month of August, September, if you're following the timeline of the story. And so it's harvest time, but there's an incredible shortage of people to go and work in the harvest. So it starts out, men and their wives are raising a cry of protest against their fellow Jews. Because here's the thing, they're working on the wall and they're not at home, and so they're having to buy food, but they don't have any money because they're not working. They're building the wall. And so this lack of money just snowballs. So because they don't have money, then they mortgage their land or their house, or their tractor, whatever. And so that they're putting, their land, their possessions, everything up for mortgage, or putting it up for collateral for loans. But then, the wealthy folks are beginning to take advantage of that. Those who have the money to lend are starting to lend at really exorbitant interest, like those payday loans, taking advantage of desperate people. The landowners then jump in, because they've had to mortgage their land to pay the taxes on the land, and then they don't have money for food either. It's just kind of, this incredible, just economic collapse. And again, it's the effect of what happens when everybody, drops what they were doing and starts building a wall. And so they begin to complain against each other, the poor people against the rich people who have the money to lend, and all of this. And it's really interesting. Verse 6, Nehemiah gets angry. Like, he hasn't been angry at all the, mess that Sanballat and Tobiah have been doing. He's not even angry at the Arabs and the Ashdodites, but he's angry at his own people here. I get it. Again, so much about Nehemiah makes sense to me, but as a leader, I can handle when the enemy is the enemy. It's when, the people turn on each other that just makes me want to jump out the window. And y'all have heard me say that sort of thing before. Oh my goodness, it's that internal conflict, when the people on the inside don't seem to know what the mission is, like when church people, and I hear this sometimes, people say, Pastor Tim, I think we're spending too much time, out in the community. We need to be taking care of our own, and I just want to go, well, I thought our own were saved. Aren't you saved? I mean, aren't the people in this church saved? Isn't our mission to go, to the ones who aren't saved, and those are the outside, the church people. But, people are like, Pastor Tim, we need to spend more time on the people inside. I think we need to do more taking care of ourselves. No, no, and so it's not a surprise, when the world doesn't understand our mission. It's when the people on the inside, and this is where Nehemiah is here. He's just angry because now it's Jews who have the money are charging, and literally, Jews having to sell their children into slavery to their fellow Jews, who are taking advantage of their hunger, taking advantage of their poverty. So Nehemiah, his head explodes in verse 6. I was very angry, and so he calls a public meeting. He calls a church business meeting, right, to deal with this problem. They're really interesting here. Nehemiah is just so careful. He's so intentional and methodical. But here you can just see his difficulty. First off, he's got to confront the most influential people in Israel, and that's hard. It's hard to speak out against those who are doing the tithing, those who are supporting everything. And this is where Nehemiah is. He's got to confront the most influential people. I think it's interesting how he implicates himself here too. He says, "Now I myself, I've been making loans too. I've been loaning people money too." Now I don't think that Nehemiah's been loaning with interest, and that's the issue here. They've been loaning at high interest. The people who are literally starving, the people who don't have any money, that you're charging them interest, which means they're never going to get out of the hole that they're in. On top of that, if some people are putting up their land as collateral, or like I say, selling their own daughters into slavery. And so Nehemiah says, okay, this has got to stop. This interest, charging. If you're going to help somebody, help somebody. It's not a time to lend, it's a time to give. You see, what they're doing is not illegal, but Nehemiah says what you're doing is not right. You can't take advantage of your own neighbor, your own kinsman. You can't do this to one another. And so that they make this pledge to give it all back. If you've been charging at interest, you give the interest back. And if you've been taking collateral, people's possessions, their land, their tractors, their cars, whatever, you give it all back. People are struggling. It's hard times. So don't make it worse for one another. And the people do as they had promised. One last thing, verse 14 is kind of this summarize, here in Nehemiah's memoirs, kind of comes here at the end and writes, something that it's not in the narrative. We step outside the timeline here. And he sort of talks about how he conducted himself the whole time he was governor. And then if you're like me, you're like, what? When did he become governor? Did I miss the election? And the whole 12 years I was governor of Judah. Well, you could have mentioned that before now. We don't, obviously, you didn't miss it, y'all. That's the first we've heard of it. When, Nehemiah leaves King Artaxerxes to go help his people and starts building a wall, there was no talk of making him governor. And there was, we didn't know he was going to stay 12 years either. So again, this is like information we're finding out for the first time here. And again, Nehemiah at some point becomes governor, and he must have lived in the governor's mansion for 12 years. But what is important here is Nehemiah just takes this economic moment to talk about the way he conducted himself here. You could say he's bragging. Some people say that Nehemiah likes to kind of, defend himself, and I don't see any of that. I just think it's important here that Nehemiah, for the sake of his own integrity, to say, and just so you know, the whole time I was governor, I didn't collect any taxes. One of the prerogatives of the governor is that he can collect taxes from the people to support, the state, but he refuses to do that. Now, one of the roles of the governor, of course, is to entertain the dignitaries and, have your fancy dinners and all of that, your state dinners. And Nehemiah just wants you to know the whole time that he has political power, he doesn't use his political power to increase his personal wealth. ooh. I mean, man, I just say that because, man, isn't that what everybody in Washington does? I mean, I know y'all get tired of hearing me, talk about politicians, but man, they all get so rich. How do they get so rich? We know what we're paying them and how they end up getting so rich. I mean, these people become millionaires, and obviously political power is something that you can leverage to make yourself rich. And Nehemiah just says, I just want you to know, that I never did that. I devoted myself to working on the wall. I refused to accept gifts and land. And I asked for nothing, even though I regularly had to feed a whole lot of people, and I tried to maintain the dignity of my office, but I did not ask for anything. I didn't collect anything. And I did all this because I know that the people are already under a whole heavy burden. I love this man. Verse 19, God, just remember what I did for these people, and bless me for it. That's not Nehemiah saying, God, you owe me. It's just Nehemiah's way of saying, I live for the Lord. I didn't try to get reward in this life, but maybe there's a reward for me in the life to come. Lord, just remember how I tried to operate. Anyway, I love him, y'all. A master class in leadership. Nehemiah is the man. We'll pick up right here on Monday morning. If you thought that maybe Sanballat and Tobiah have given up and forgotten, man, you got another thing coming, because Monday morning we're going to have them for breakfast. Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab are going to show back up. Man, these guys are making me so tired, but they will not quit. And just because the wall's almost finished, do you think that's going to make them stop? Oh no, they're going to double down on Monday. So read ahead, Nehemiah chapter 6, verses 1 to 19, the return of Sanballat on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. I love you guys so much. Have a good weekend. I'm preaching through the book of 1 John in the pulpit at Woodburn. So Monday morning, 8 o'clock, 9:30 or 11 here in person, or if you must, I'll see you here on Facebook or YouTube Live. Love you guys so much. Have a good weekend. Stay in the Word, stay in the Lord, and I'll see you Monday morning, Lord willing.